So even on the eve of hearing crucial testimony from the architect of the Mueller report, Democrats are maneuvering to hear from its beating heart. NBC's Mike Memoli is reporting just this hour. House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler is preparing to compel testimony from former White House counsel Don McGahn. Unlike Robert Mueller, McGahn would be a so-called fact witness, so essential in the report Mueller put together and considered a linchpin in any obstruction case against Donald Trump. You might remember back in May, Trump directed McGahn to defy a congressional subpoena to testify by insisting he was immune from compelled congressional testimony. The committee held him in contempt, and now at some point in the next few days, they could seek a court order to bring him before their panel. Joining us now from the Hill, the reporter who broke this story in his exclusive reporting, my colleague Mike Memoli. Mike, you quote Eric Swalwell in your piece, who says Robert Mueller is an Act 1 witness and Don McGahn Act 2. What did he mean by that?
Well, Nicole, this actually surprised me over the last few weeks as I've been talking to Democrats and also members of the Judiciary Committee staff about how important Mueller was going to be for this larger investigation. The name Don McGahn actually was the one that kept coming up. And the reason why they think he's the most important witness is because he's witnessed the most. Think about it, Nicole. His name appears in the Mueller report over 500 times. He voluntarily gave 30 hours of testimony to Robert Mueller. So if you think about the cliche that we're now hear so often about, which is that the Mueller testimony tomorrow is all about bringing to life the Mueller report, that no one watches the movie, no one reads the book, everyone watches the movie. Well, Mueller wrote the book, but Don McGahn is certainly part of the main cast. And so what happens going forward now is they think tomorrow you're going to hear Don McGahn's name come up a lot. As you mentioned, they've already subpoenaed Don McGahn. He, at the orders of the White House, has not testified, not turned over the documents that they want. But this is going to be a court battle, and the question really is just how soon will they be able to get McGahn in? And this gets to really the inherent contradiction of this investigation, which is McGahn's testimony could be critical to getting to impeachment, but without impeachment, they might not be able to get his testimony. In the courts, that really might be the linchpin here, which is if they launch the inquiry, they actually could get his testimony, but we'll see.
Let's talk about some of what Jim Comey, and it's important that we haven't talked about some of these incredibly vivid scenes really since the days after the Mueller report first came out, but we just relived some of them with Jim Comey, and I know that there's this sort of idea that McGahn's a complicated witness. He doesn't wish the president any ill. He's still a Republican closely aligned with Mitch McConnell, but he also said to then Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, the president wanted me to do some crazy bleep, rhymes with hit. I mean, he was sort of the narrator for the president's misconduct around the Russia probe, asked to fire Mueller, asked to put out this false denial of a story that was accurate. I mean, he had a note taker who wrote down everything that Donald Trump asked them to do. Talk about what McGahn saw.
No, this is absolutely central to if there is an obstruction of justice impeachment charge against the president. He is absolutely critical to that. And we've actually gotten a little bit of a preview of how that questioning might go. Annie Donaldson, of course, his chief of staff, has responded to some written questions before the committee. She was asked if she was present in the room when the president called McGahn to order him to talk to Jeff Sessions about whether or not he should recuse himself from the investigation. She was asked whether she was in the room when the president called Don McGahn to ask him to fire Mueller outright. So these are the most important questions as it relates to obstruction of justice. Donaldson was not allowed to answer those questions by White House counsel. And so that's, again, why we're going to see Don McGahn's name come up again and again tomorrow so that they can add, I've been told they already have the legal paperwork ready to file, to bring this case to court to try to force McGahn into the chair. They hope to add to that case by getting more from Mueller tomorrow to illustrate why they need him here.
Mike Memoli, it's an incredible piece of reporting. I'm reminded that Donald Trump has attacked Don McGahn since he left the White House and since the Mueller report came out, kind of.
And the fact that he's denied those claims, it's important to have his corroboration publicly. That's why Democrats need him here.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.